All right, looks like we are live. So, thank you for being here for another Monday night where we're going to discuss some of the recent events occurring here in the country, as well as some other things happening in other places in the world that we should be paying attention to and considering certain aspects of, especially based on some recent events. And we'll call them maybe escalations or just progressions at this point in time. But we are definitely seeing some interesting stuff unfold on the modern battlefield, whether or not that's here at home in the United States or if it's abroad. And it may require us to adapt to a new threat environment here in the future. So I think it's worth discussing. And of course, I want to say hello to some great people that we have in the chat tonight. We have the Goggles do nothing with 5x5. I could not read that for some reason. And we have Harbor Prepper with the 5x5. Derek says, magic appears. I indeed appear. And we also have Shadow Prepper with the 5x5 6, one of my favorite numbers. An excellent time we can have with that one. JT Springston, the professor, sup to you as well. Good evening, Texas Surplus Pro. Glad you're here. I always appreciate your insights being shared over on X. And of course, if you don't know, check out Texas Surplus Pro. So, 45x70 says my corner T-bar and stuff. Now, that is quite a number that we all can appreciate, I would assume. Anyhow, especially if we had to fight velociraptors, I think 4570 is a good way to go. Just my opinion, but hey, what do I know? Let's get going. There's some interesting things to talk about. Nick says, what do they want us to fear today? Well, you know what? I don't think we necessarily need to fear these things, but we should discuss them because from a preparedness standpoint, there are some things that we can learn from current situations that are occurring. And of course, plan for in the future when things get out of control, which maybe they already are, right? So, but I do like the way that you put that. Now, let's see here. Let's jump into this just because I want to touch base on the situation in Kerr County, Texas, and just make sure that we're all aware of what's happening there, just in case anybody's been under a rock this past weekend. We did have, July 4th, so there was a lot of people traveling and camping and without service. So I do want to touch on this because it is a extremely tragic natural disaster event. People are speculating on the natural aspect of that, of course, but regardless of the origins of the event itself, the people who lost their lives and are missing are still suffering, so we have to make sure to pay attention to it, okay? Texas Flooding Live updates over 100 dead in the state, 11 missing from Camp Mystic. So in case you weren't, within connection range or just haven't had a beat on what's been happening, there was a flash flood incident in Kerr County, Texas, as well as in other parts of the state that just rose so quickly that people didn't have time to react or evacuate, and obviously many lives have been lost. So we'll just go through this really quickly, and then we're going to talk about some ways that you could possibly support some of the recovery efforts there if you so choose to. Okay, so over 100 people are dead after heavy rain led to devastating flooding in Texas. Kerr County was hit the hardest with at least 84 deaths, including 28 children. President Donald Trump signed a disaster declaration for the county, and the Federal Emergency Management Agency is on the ground there. Okay, the vast majority of fatalities were in Kerr County. Deaths have also been confirmed in Travis, Williamson, Burnett, Tom Green, and Kendall counties. There have been over 850 high water rescues, Texas Senator Ted Cruz said. Okay, Texas will come through this, is what Cruz said at a news conference. Questions have swirled around if there was enough warning and enough staffing for the early Friday morning floods in the wake of the Trump administration's job cuts to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. But NOAA confirmed that the National Weather Service's Austin and San Antonio office had 5 meteorologists working the severe weather event as part of its surge staffing protocol. It is normally staffed with 2. NOAA also said the NWS had forecast briefings Thursday morning, issued a flood watch Thursday afternoon, and then issued a flash flood warning on Thursday night and early Friday. This gave preliminary lead times of more than 3 hours before flash flooding conditions occurred, NOAA said in a statement. White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt said on Monday that blaming President Trump for these floods is a depraved lie. It serves no purpose during the time of national mourning. But of course, people are going to place blame and point fingers and everything else related to any of these tragic events because it's unfathomable for people to lose their lives at this scale for something that we consider to be, a natural occurrence that does happen frequently, at least in regards to occurrences, but at this level and at this speed, at the rising water levels and everything else related to the instantaneous destruction, it's unprecedented in many ways. So this was a very just tragic disaster. And the loss of life here is astounding, even compared to some other recent natural disasters that we've witnessed here in the country. I mean, 100 people have perished at minimum so far, and that is a lot. Okay, so here they're talking about how you can help. The American Red Cross is one of several organizations assisting with victim support, shelter, and supplies. Here's the thing. I always try to mention this during these disasters. The Red Cross, they don't necessarily apply your donations to the disaster that you're trying to support. Very often, it just goes into a giant pool that gets distributed among whatever they have going on that they deem more important or more of a priority, and then that money just kind of dissipates into whatever different functions that they're trying to apply it for. So the one thing I would say is that if you're interested in helping out, I did get an email from Grindstone Ministries. And in case you don't know, Grindstone Ministries is a nonprofit that has boots on the ground that goes out and helps people, especially in the recovery phase of these disasters. And one of the things that I like to bring up about that is because in the recovery phase is when people stop paying attention. That's when the media stops talking about it. That's when people are no longer concerned about the aftermath of the disaster because all of the reporting of the disaster itself has already happened and passed. So this is actually really important because this is what gets people back into homes. This is what gets people, into shelter or into some sustainable form of life that they can, maintain until they get back on their feet. So just to kind of throw this out there, this is from Grindstone Ministries. We extend our heartfelt support to the communities impacted by the devastating flash floods in central Texas this July. Torrential rains have caused catastrophic flooding, particularly along the Guadalupe River, claiming at least 80 lives, including 28 children, and leaving several missing, notably from Camp Mystic in Kerr County. Over 850 people have been rescued with ongoing search efforts supported by the Texas National Guard, U.S. Coast Guard, and volunteers. Governor Greg Abbott has committed to relentless rescue operations, and federal assistance is available for Kerr County residents. Donations can be made. We are in close contact with local officials, and should we deploy, an op order will be issued to coordinate our efforts. Our thoughts are with those affected, and we encourage our community to support Grindstone Ministries' relief efforts to aid those in need. Recon teams will be on the ground this week. It says accessing, but I think it's supposed to be assessing needs and required resources to be able for us to do what we do and be the hands and feet of our Creator. Donations can be made via our website, grindstoneministries.com. So if you're interested, I personally would always prefer to support a organization directly that's going to be there, boots on the ground, actually helping people. And I'll put that link in the chat right now as well as it's in the description. But that's an organization that I actually trust and believe to be boots on the ground, taking care of these things when they occur, okay? So that is something that I wanted to talk about. It's obviously a huge tragedy and a massive natural disaster. And this never-ending emergency status, which is the title of tonight's live stream, is in regards to the fact that every single day and every week some other major catastrophe seems to occur. And whether or not it's domestically or on a more international scale, these things just do not give up. They're relentless, which is one of the reasons why it's important to keep preparing, although it can be overwhelming and at times be very daunting because it just seems like no matter what you do, something like this can come along and just literally, wash you away. This flash flooding incident in Kerr County was moving homes completely downriver, just pushing them right off their property. So you have to have more than just your supplies, right? You have to have contingencies and plans. You have to be willing to obey evacuation orders, or at least have plans to evacuate in case you find it to be appropriate and necessary to do so. And you also need to ensure that you're paying attention when these things start to begin, especially if warnings are being put out by the weather, whether or not that's NOAA or the, National Meteorological Society or whatever it might be. These are warnings that you should heed and pay attention to, even if you don't necessarily think you're going to be directly affected, because these things can evolve very quickly, rapidly, to the point of not having the time to actually appropriately react. And that's why there's been so many roof rescues occurring there, because so many people had only the option of getting up on their roof because anywhere else was underwater, and even the roof wasn't necessarily a safe bet, but it was the best they had. So just keep that in mind and understand that these natural events, look, could there be some kind of, sinister program at play here when it comes to weather manipulation and everything else? Of course, that's something that's speculated about rampantly here in the community, which I totally understand, because there's evidence of things of that nature occurring in the past, and we all have, skepticism related to things that those who are in charge would do. But at the same time, the real issue and the real thing to pay attention to is what's happening to the people on the ground, not why it happened to begin with. Because clearly there's nothing much I can do about anything that might be occurring in a nefarious manner. But I can at least learn from these scenarios and hopefully provide some support to those people who are on the ground if possible. So, just so you know, I know like some of like the guys out there like Donut Operator and Brandon Herrera and them have been on the ground there trying to help people and trying to help first responders and stuff. So I know those are other avenues that you can look at for where donations and everything else are being accepted. And then I also know that when it comes to the entirety of like what I do, one of the things I do here is I'm an affiliate with Refuge Medical, and although it's not Grindstone Ministries, any commissions that I receive from Refuge Medical products go directly to their charity Caleb House, which is another excellent nonprofit that helps support victims of trafficking. So just be aware of those things, and obviously, you have to take care of yourself before you can help others. So being in a position where you can help others is a goal that I think all of us should have. And I think a lot of times that turns into things like, trying to get rid of debt and stuff like that, right? So anyway, just wanted to make sure we were on the same page there. Traveler 1970 says these massive flash floods are becoming more frequent. And Savage Lee says, possibly, welcome to the 21st century, weather is a weapon. And there, of course, can weather patterns change? Yes. Can climate move around and cause chaos depending on, jet streams and things of that nature? Yeah, I can assume that too. We have, magnetic pole shifting going on. We have the degradation of the atmosphere, the ionosphere, and things of that nature, right? The ozone is degrading. But regardless, we also know that anything that could be weaponized has been attempted to be weaponized, right? That's pretty clear and pretty reasonable to assume. So it's always easy to speculate on those things, but I try my best not to get too hung up on the conspiracy aspect, because it doesn't necessarily solve any issues and it doesn't necessarily help us with anything, because anything that's been related to those types of things in recent history haven't seemed to really play out or lead to any solutions, have they? So here we are. Now, Viv B, good to see you. Lone Wolf, Canada's in the house. Cheers from Alberta. Well, glad you're here, and I appreciate you hanging out and chiming in. Okay, Krieger does say flash floods are nothing new to the hill country of Texas, and that's also true. We get flash flood warnings here in North Dakota on a regular basis because the lakes suddenly fill during all the winter runoff and everything else. So these things do happen naturally. They are naturally occurring, but they don't always have this level of destruction. So sometimes things do just happen naturally, and I understand why the speculation is there, but we also have to just keep in mind that if we can't control it, the origin doesn't really matter, right? So let's talk about another thing that happened here recently. Hey, what's up, Kevin Purdy? You don't have to apologize for being late. I just appreciate you being here, okay? So let's talk about this whole situation involving something I touched base on the channel here just recently, but this is something that I think is another example of what I was trying to convey in that video, which I'll share with you all here after we go over the story. But there was a situation where a shooter opened fire on Border Patrol agents in South Texas, and they've recently been identified, okay? Now, this is, the story itself isn't like necessarily super impactful. It's the call sign regarding the crime itself that we need to pay attention to and that I want to bring to your attention. So just to kind of touch on that first so you have all the information, and then we'll talk about why this is applicable to the current situation in America and why these types of events are what we should be concerning ourselves with and preparing for, in the sense of the more like self-defense related aspect of preparation, right? So let's move into this. A shooter who allegedly opened fire on Border Patrol agents outside a federal building in McAllen, Texas, has been identified by authorities as 27-year-old Michigan resident Ryan Luis Mosqueda. An active shooter armed with tactical gear and a rifle opened fire upon Border Patrol agents as they arrived at a Border Patrol annex facility in McAllen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley on Monday. Law enforcement believes the attack was a purposeful ambush targeting Border Patrol officials. In a press conference after the shooting, McAllen Police Chief Victor Rodriguez identified the suspected shooter as Mosqueda, saying he allegedly opened fire on the agents, firing many dozens of rounds at the building. Rodriguez confirmed that the suspect was killed on the scene by agents returning fire. According to the police chief, there is no known motive yet for why Mosqueda allegedly opened fire on Border Patrol agents. The allegedly thing is interesting because this person has already been deceased, and clearly there was a shootout, so I guess we just don't have all the evidence quite yet, but I just find that to be an interesting use of words there. He said the suspect is associated with an address in Michigan and that he arrived at the scene driving a vehicle with Michigan plates. He also mentioned that the suspect's car had spray painting on it with some language on it, possibly Latin that he could not decipher. According to Rodriguez, Mosqueda was reported missing from an address in nearby Westlake, and an hour and a few minutes later, he was at this particular location, opening fire on a federal building. In a statement emailed to Fox News Digital, a spokesperson for the FBI San Antonio said that McAllen police received calls of shots being heard by a local Border Patrol facility near the McAllen International Airport at approximately 5:53 a.m. The spokesperson said the armed suspect, who they did not identify as Mosqueda, but rather an adult male, engaged the law enforcement officers responding to the scene, and officers returned fire. Okay? So, the FBI says there's currently no threat to public safety. We are aware of that. The investigation is ongoing. Here's the reason I brought this story up and why it's something to pay attention to, okay? This goes into a video that I recently shared about the modern American battlefield and how these types of events are what the, let's just call them enemies at large, are actually trying to fabricate or basically create the conditions for in order for them to become more frequent and more successful. And so this is an example, at least in my opinion, based on the recent information I just shared with everybody in that video, as well as these types of events having that same exact style of attack mixed with the same exact motivations, right? The motivations are generally political in nature and some sort of extreme ideology based on the media pushing a narrative that gets people emotionally attached to this concept. And then it's always somebody who has, access to a level of equipment that has the mental, well, we'll just call it instability and willingness to go out and commit an act based on a righteousness that they've identified because of the different media outlets that have been pushing this idea that these things that are occurring right now are evil and need to be corrected. And so this happens in many different communities in many different ways, but it's perpetrated, at least the battlefield preparation is perpetrated by these people who don't want America to be a country in many ways. And like when I say that, I don't necessarily mean, like the land mass itself. I mean, the way that we operate as a republic and the way that we operate as a society and a culture, they do not want to exist any longer. They want to tear it down and turn it into something more aligned with what we see in third world countries. So this is another example of that particular situation, at least in my opinion. Obviously, everything related to Border Patrol and ICE and all of those different events that have been occurring recently has created a lot of public outcry, and there's been a lot of media pushing for the idea of making this, an evil event, which then makes people believe what they're doing is indeed justified. And then they move forward with whatever nefarious plan they come up with based on maybe levels of pressure that are applied to them in some of these more obscure areas of the internet, especially in Discord servers or on forums and anywhere else where people might congregate who have similar ideologies, right? And they find and target these demographics because they know that they're susceptible to this type of programming. And then they open the door. They don't necessarily say, hey, go do this, but they open the door and they provide the necessary motivation. And then they provide the opportunities, the ample opportunities of where these things would be the most successful and where they would have the largest impact, and then they let those people decide whether or not it's something that they're going to do. So that's something that I wanted to share because I think that's a great example of another incident, just like what happened in Idaho, happening in this regard. Now, I do want to share that video in case anybody hadn't seen it yet, because it didn't get a ton of views. It's at about 12,000 views right now, which obviously isn't like a super high performing video, but it is something that I think is important. So I'm going to go ahead and drop the video link in the chat right here, and it's called Modern American Battlefield Isn't What You Think It Is. So make sure you check out that video. I just popped it in the live chat in case you're curious, but it's a video I worked on, and I got some help with that video by talking to a friend of mine who's in law enforcement that gave me some good information about some of the things that they've been seeing in the sense of patterns and frequency and things of that nature, and how this outside influence, these we can call them foreign adversaries, even if they're private organizations and not necessarily state actors, they specifically do these things in order to try to destabilize the country, which allows for a lot of different things to occur, like control, power grabbing. There's a vacuum that's created, which allows people to move in with whatever regulations or stipulations they want to start trying to implement. So these are things that I think we should be considering, especially seeing that these events keep occurring and they're all ideologically motivated, which tells you something. It's basically the red flag. So, Gun Nut, what's up? But still, I'm late, but still earlier than usual, than my usual viewing time of the next day. I couldn't read that or speak English, so here we are. But Replay Crew in the house. And by the way, if you're here on Replay Crew, check it in the comments. I always appreciate you guys. And of course, if you want to like the video and subscribe, I think that this always helps because it gets the channel out there a little bit further and it grows the community, and that's something that I really appreciate. So, let's keep moving. Savage Lee, we'll see more rains than normal due to volcanic activity. Remember, Honga Tonga 2022 added nearly 10% more moisture to Earth's atmosphere in one event. Interesting. So that's good to know. I'm actually not fully versed in that information. So, but if you're saying it, I have a feeling that you have a lot more info about it than I do, and that's very interesting. So a good thing to keep in mind. Roddy Hood says, $1.99 super chat just to say hi, I guess, and I appreciate you doing that, and thank you so much for supporting the channel. Taiwaz says, I used to be Replay till lately. Well, you know what? I'm glad you're here, and I would have been glad you were here on Replay too. So either way, I appreciate you being here. Now, let's keep moving forward. Jay Enlarge says, I like the new tool, Magic. Hope to pick one up soon, considering a BOGO sale. So right now, here's what I'll mention about the tool. In case you're not aware, I did release the Magic Prepper tool. It's not that. It's called the MP Field Tool. But you know what? It's got my logo on it, so we can call it whatever we want, right? But at the end of the day, it's a tool that took months of development, R&D, prototyping. There was a lot of costs involved and everything else related to trying to get this thing up and running. And the amount of support that you all poured into that particular product has been overwhelmingly outstanding. And like, I can't even express how much appreciation I have and how grateful I am for all of that support. It is insane. And in all honesty, right now, so we're getting orders fulfilled as soon as humanly possible, but the first production run sold out like immediately, which was not an expectation we had. So we're doing our best to get everything fully caught up. Everything else is already in production, but we just have to get it there. So once everything is produced, which we're hoping will be in as little as 10 days, we'll get everything fully sent out. And if your tool was delayed because of that initial like crazy amount of overwhelming support, which clearly I'm like having a hard time talking about it because I'm so blown away and flabbergasted. But if your tool was delayed, you'll get an email letting you know about it, and we'll discuss how much we're thankful for that support and thankful for your patience, and we hope to just kind of keep things moving forward. But it has been insane and blew my expectations out of the water. And we are full steam ahead on getting everything caught back up because the initial orders were just huge. So thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. And I'm trying my best to get all the feedback I've gotten from the comments section. And like, we're looking at, additional generations of the tool in the future with possible other materials and some different design features that may or may not be possible based on what materials we're using. So like, there's so much that goes into it. And I appreciate everyone understanding, it's made in the USA. It's got high quality materials and craftsmanship. And I'll have some video footage out here in the near future of some of the manufacturing process, but like, there's parts of the tool that are literally done, by hand by the guys over at EDC Specialties that are helping me get this done. And I hope that, sharing that information just gives everybody a glimpse into the value proposition. But it's been amazing. I really appreciate all of you showing that level of support. And here, I'll go ahead and pull this up really quick for anybody who's not aware of what's been going on or what we're talking about. And this is the MP Field Tool, which is a product I just launched yesterday officially on the channel. And if you want yours, just go to my website, magicprepper.com, and you can place an order or learn how to place an order there. And you can also find out more information about the tool. And of course, the video I put out yesterday is now right on the front page of the website, so you can find that there too. And the support has been insane. So thank you guys so much. Like, I can't even explain how grateful I am. And I look forward to working on improving things in the future, and eventually maybe we can scale up and do larger production and all kinds of things. And in the future, maybe I'll be able to do something that can help be just easier to access for everyone. This is a first for me. I am new to these things, and we're doing the best we can. And I just can't believe how well this was supported. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. And I'll go ahead and just mention, yes, if you want to check it out, just go to my website. It's magicprepper.com, right? And you will find everything you need to know about how to order it and everything else right there and then, okay? And right now, even though we blew through that first initial production run, if you want to order one, just go for it, because we are just like cranking these out as quickly as possible. And the sooner you order, the sooner you'll get one, because it's just going to be a first come first serve situation at this point. And we're full bore ahead. So thank you guys, really, I 100% appreciate it. So let's see here. Basset Hound Lover says, I'm at kids volleyball practice. Glad you're live. Hey man, I get it. You know what? We got to do stuff for our kids. We got to show that support. But if it gives you something to do in the meantime to maintain your presence there, then I'm glad I could help you out with that. Okay. JD, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Jay and Large says, follow Lucas Botkin for business advice. Well, you know what? I actually asked him a question on his recent video in hopes that maybe he'll respond, because he said he would respond to people regarding marketing in a future video. And I always appreciate all advice. Look, I have my own professional background and experience, and I've done a lot of different things, especially now in this industry. When I say that, what I mean is like the more commercial side of like preparedness with like firearms companies and solar generators, all that kind of stuff, right? And I've learned a lot, but I'm always willing to learn more, or at least entertain another perspective or another point of view, because I don't know everything, and I'm I try my best to be humble about my expectations of personal experience, because I want to do better. So sometimes you need to learn in order to improve. Now, let's see here. Jumping into, people said, show intel. Hello, good to see you. Show intel is a channel. Interesting. Well, maybe I'm behind. Is that a new channel? I should know these things, shouldn't I? Well, I want to find out now, because you have piqued my curiosity. Okay. And you know what? Let's see here. Show intel. We are here to provide news updates, track military planes from different countries, and listen to emergency action messages. Okay, cool. Well, I can appreciate that. Nice. All right, well, I will subscribe and take a look and listen in and see how it goes. Cool. All right, thanks for checking in. Now, let's go ahead and jump into something I want to bring up that I think is very interesting, okay? Now, this goes into the Idaho firefighter situation, right? But this is a report from today, and this is interesting, okay? So I'm going to read you the story and give you some ideas about the situation here, and then I'm going to talk to you about something that I recently got involved with that is, I think, going to be extremely beneficial, especially for rural and small town USA. So if you're in those communities, like, pay attention, because this is something that I'm involved with now that is trying to help in a way that is also beneficial to everyone involved, okay? I'll say that for now, and then I'll explain it here in a minute. Idaho firefighter ambush prompts reflection, caution among local first responders, okay? Now, this is just, the take here is really indicative of like what might need to be required here in the future. The apparent ambush of firefighters in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho last weekend has sent a wave of shock and reflection through the public safety community, including first responders in central Wisconsin. 2 firefighters were killed and several others wounded July 5th after a gunman opened fire as they responded to a wildland fire in northern Idaho. Early reports suggest the gunman may have intentionally set the blaze to lure in emergency responders. While the nation has seen several police-related shootings in recent weeks, including one in Milwaukee, fire service leaders say the Idaho attack is uniquely disturbing. This one is different, said Stevens Point Fire Chief J.B. Moody. This wasn't an officer-involved shooting or crossfire. This appears to have been an intentional targeting of firefighters, and that hits differently. As a chief, you're always asking, are we prepared for this? Are we prepared for the next issue, he said. You never know what you're going to be sent into. If this had happened 25 years ago and you mentioned active shooter or rescue task force training, people would have laughed. Now nothing is off the table. RTF training, specialized drills that prepare fire, EMS, and police to respond jointly to active shooter or high-risk scenarios, has become a regular part of local preparedness efforts. Plover Fire Chief Mark Deaver said the Idaho ambush serves as a grim reminder of the growing risks faced by fire personnel. There's always been danger in this job, but how do we fight fires differently than we have for so many years, Deaver said. People ask, are you going to start wearing bulletproof vests? For a wildland fire, it's sort of hard to do that. Yeah, those Sawyers are already sweating, I guarantee you. Deaver said he's grateful law enforcement routinely responds to fire scenes for support, including traffic control and scene security, something he says provides an added layer of safety for fire crews. It's a crucial part of our response, he said. We had a fire last week and law enforcement was great to have on scene. They help with interviews, investigations, and keeping everyone safe. Okay? We sign up for dangerous work. That's part of the job. Now we obviously don't sign up to get shot at like law enforcement does, but it's still dangerous. We're very lucky because here in Amherst and out in the county, deputies are almost always on the scene with us. Okay? Plover police officer Seth Pionki said the Idaho tragedy serves as a reminder of how quickly danger can arise, even in calls that seem routine. I think it's a good reminder, but we've always been doing RTF. We protect all the medical personnel that are there. We've been doing this for a long time. Okay? Now, this is interesting because this is becoming more and more of a requirement, and these attacks that create these scenarios are more and more of a problem. Now, Show Intel, thanks so much for becoming a member. I appreciate it. Just so you know, now that you're a member, we do have the private live stream tonight at 9:15 Central Standard Time. So as a member, you have access to that. So to find that, just go to the post tab on my channel page, and there will be a post there for members only that gives you the link to that private live stream where we just hang out and do fun stuff, okay? So let's see here. And yeah, I'm glad we have good people, in the community trying their best to share intel and information, and that's always going to be beneficial, right? I think so, at least. Now, here's something that I want to kind of bring up about this whole situation. The Idaho firefighter ambush, as well as what these law enforcement officers or first responders in Wisconsin are talking about, is that they're not necessarily prepared for these things. They aren't, okay? Because first off, they have limited funding, limited access to resources, and they also aren't anticipating a sniper ambush attack on them in their locations. But we just saw that somebody attacked a customs or a border patrol facility armed up with a rifle, right? They went there to cause chaos and wreak havoc. Luckily, they were eliminated, but these things do happen and are happening more frequently, especially in these rural environments. And with what just happened in Idaho, that was a great example of how hard it is to respond to those types of attacks in these, smaller jurisdictions. So one of the things, what's up? Nick Easy, thanks so much for becoming a member. Great. Now you can also be in the private live stream. This is awesome. Thank you guys. I really appreciate you. So here's the thing, okay? The firefighter ambush and that recent border patrol attack and all these other things, they also demonstrate the need for additional training for law enforcement. So I got involved with something called the Task Force 70 Foundation. Now, this is a new 501c3 nonprofit. Now, I am helping them behind the scenes to kind of get things up and running, and I'm pretty happy to be part of this because there's more to it than just training police officers. But here's what this does. This organization helps to train rural and small town police officers on advanced tactics like hostage rescue situations and enhanced patrol tactics and things that they just don't have access to currently based on budgetary restrictions and manpower restrictions. And the other thing that's great about this new organization is that it also teaches everything through a constitutional parameter. So the idea here is to not only teach these police how to be more confident in their ability to respond to threats, but also how to operate in a constitutional mindset so that they respect the rights of the citizenry that they protect, and they also understand what they're capable of doing within the constitutional constraints. So it's a multifaceted training program that helps these smaller departments that don't have funding and don't have the ability to get this type of training to get the police officers in and train them at basically zero cost to the officers themselves, as well as zero cost to their department. I mean, it helps take care of the additional overtime for manpower. It helps take care of the training and the travel and all types of things in order to get these officers in. And now what's great is that if you want to be part of this cause, first off, it's a nonprofit, so you can write it off as a tax write-off. But second off, If you want to get involved, it's basically at the member level, it's like $20 a month, okay? If you want to be an individual donor, there's also much larger donation packages and stuff of that nature. But at that donation rate, what that allows is that you get the ability to do things like nominate your local police to get some of this training. And like I said, the training's provided to the police officers themselves for free. Basically covers everything besides like some minor costs that might be incurred by officers who have extreme amounts of travel in order to make it to the facilities. But the idea here is that it gets these police the training they need and allows their departments to agree to it because it doesn't hurt them in the process. And then the other part that's great is that we have companies jumping on board, such as BCM, who are supporting the donors of this organization with things that might be related to like monthly, let's just call them support packages that would help people out in order to say thank you, and it's their way of supporting the cause of what this organization is doing. So there's going to be a lot of ways for you to give in this situation in order to help support your local police. And the best thing is that you get to nominate your local police department as a donor to this organization to get that additional training, while also getting enrolled into the possibility of receiving, support packages from different entities that are involved with the organization. So just keep it in mind, it's Task Force 70. It's also tf70.org, and I have a link in my description if you want to check it out. But I am involved with this because from someone who lives in a rural environment and someone who lives in a small town, what I'm going to tell you is that the police here are not the LAPD. They're not NYPD, right? These are not the police officers that we often see contentious issues with in the media. The police officers I have in my town are part of the town. Their kids go to school here. They know most of the people that walk around town and say hello and good morning, and they get people to bring them coffee and donuts and stuff on a regular basis. And they're part of the community, and they are just here to try to maintain a level of stability. And they don't have the training to be able to respond to something like an advanced hostage scenario. They don't have the training to be able to respond to, maybe like an active shooter, especially at like a school or something like that. They're trained to a degree, state mandate training, which does have benefits, but it's nowhere near the level of training they actually need to be confident to deal with those scenarios. And we've seen things like that unfold in other rural and small town areas where the police did not respond appropriately because they just didn't honestly know what to do because they didn't have that training. And since the state and the federal government's not able to provide it, this organization provides it. And the other thing that's great is that Task Force 70 takes no money from the federal or state government. And because of that, they don't have to operate within the constraints of all of the bureaucratic red tape that they would be required to deal with. Like, oh, you have to use this type of literature and you have to use this type of facility and you have to have this many people. None of that happens. Instead, they actually just get to say, here's what we're training. You're going to learn this. And guess what? You're also going to learn some things about the Constitution in the process because that's what's important to us in the sense of law enforcement being part of the community, not, the whole here's all the training so you can go out there and be tyrannical in nature, right? Like that's the opposite of what's trying to be accomplished here. Here's the training so you can actually serve your community to the highest level while also understanding what is and what is not reasonable within the confines of the Constitution. So I wanted to bring that up because we have a lot of examples of why something like this is becoming increasingly necessary and unfortunately never going to be provided on the level required from the local and state governments. So here we are, okay? So I hope that it makes sense, and there's a reason why I got involved with the organization, because I think that we can make a difference, especially in these small towns. My local police department has 6 police officers, right? That's they don't have the capability to go learn advanced hostage rescue when they only have 6 cops working anyway, right? So these are the things that we're trying to improve on. Let's see here. Dan Rose. In my small town, I noticed more police stationed at more churches in my town. Normally, I don't see that, but must have had some threats made against them. That's possible, Dan. I also know that a lot of police keep these networks where they actually discuss things with each other, especially, with jurisdictions that share county lines and things of that nature. They talk about local threats or they talk about things they've run into, and they share that intel so that other agencies are capable of, heightening security or making, better strategic plans about the current threat environment. So, but it's interesting that you say that, and I appreciate you bringing that up. Okay, so let's see here. I noticed more police only on the roads writing tickets, says Nash Burton. Yeah, well, you know what? Let's be honest. Like, especially in more urbanized areas, that's going to be a lot of what you see. But unfortunately, a lot of what we're seeing, these days also involves, officers writing tickets and then going up to the window to issue a citation and being shot at it instead of just, having a normal conversation like most people would have. So we're getting into some interesting times. I've said it before, rural areas, the officers tend to be part of the community. Urban areas, they have issues. Yes, exactly, J.K. And I know people have said this to me in the past. They're like, oh, magic bootlicker, right? Because this guy talks to cops and, they're going to come raid your house. I'm like, no, they know who I am so that when I'm in the community doing things, like they're not concerned about me. And in fact, they would ask for help if I, was in the area and they needed it. Like, and I don't have any issue with that. But yeah, when I was back living in, Sacramento, California, did I want to have SAC PD all over my business? No, not at all. And I'm glad that they didn't, right? But that's the reality of it, right? There is a difference. And that's why this organization is working with these small and rural police officers instead of, like the NYPD, for example. So, Florida Sheepdog said, 20 officers hired by DEI are 2 officers well-trained and constitutional with true grit. Yeah, I think we know the 2 officers are going to be more effective long-term and be more liked by their community. So good call on that one, okay? EasyBots has been looking maybe joining police in Washington State. I've been hearing about crazy sign-on bonuses like up to $50K in some cities. Well, you know what? I think that if someone wanted to become a police officer, you have to have the calling, you have to have that willingness, and you have to understand, let's just say, the way that your jurisdiction would operate, especially on a local level. Because, in some places, the police are mistreated by the ones who write their checks. And then you have to decide if that's something you could handle or deal with, or if you'd rather be somewhere with a little bit more flexibility, right? So, okay, so let's go ahead and talk about another situation, okay? What's happening in Ukraine right now is escalatory, and we've seen a lot of ramping up of additional attacks in the region. And in fact, it seems that Russia has been gaining more territory, and this thing is just not going away. So the thing that we have to keep in mind is that the way it looks to me, especially based on a lot of this new information that's coming out, is that this literally has just developed into the military-industrial complex's training ground, right? Their battlefield testing zone, where they're trying out new technologies and getting everything ready to go. But without real-world data and actual battlefield experience, how can you ensure that these products are going to work properly when called upon? And so we're going to talk about that right now because there's some interesting things here that I want to share with you. Now, first off, Trump is sending more weapons there now, even though they just paused all weapon shipments. This was a 180 just from a few days ago, okay? So who knows what spurs these things along, but here we are, okay? All right. Trump says the U.S. to send more weapons to Ukraine days after ordering a pause in deliveries. President Trump says the U.S. will have to send more weapons to Ukraine just days after ordering a pause in critical weapons deliveries to Kiev. The comments made by Trump on Monday, today, appeared to be an abrupt change, in posture after the Pentagon announced last week that it would hold back delivering to Ukraine some air defense missiles, precision-guided artillery, and other weapons as part of its announced pause to some arms shipments amid U.S. concerns that its own stockpiles have declined too much, which, to my knowledge, they have, but we're still doing it. We have to, Trump told reporters about additional weapons deliveries for Ukraine. They have to be able to defend themselves. This is a breaking news update. AP's earlier story follows below. Now, Russian attacks on Ukraine killed at least 11 civilians and injured more than 80 others, including 7 children, officials said on Monday. These attacks are ramping up. Now, this is a whole thing about the transport minister who was fired and was later found dead in Russia, yada, 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 typical Russia stuff, let's be honest, okay? Now, here's what you really need to be aware of, okay? Russia recently has intensified its airstrikes on civilian areas after more than 3 years of war. In the past week, Russia launched some 1,270 drones, 39 missiles, and almost 1,000 powerful glide bombs at Ukraine, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky said on Monday. Russia's bigger army is also trying hard to break through at some points along the roughly 1,000-kilometer or 620-mile, for my Americans, front line where Ukrainian forces are severely stretched. Having a hard time talking tonight. The strain of keeping Russia's invasion at bay, the lack of progress in direct peace talks, and last week's halt of some promised U.S. weapons shipments have compelled Ukraine to seek more military help from the U.S. and Europe. Zelensky said Saturday that Ukraine had signed deals with European allies and a leading U.S. defense company to step up drone production, ensuring Kiev receives hundreds of thousands more this year. So, this is getting worse, not better, okay? Now, would I have liked Trump to have ended the war day one, like we were told? Yes, I would have. Did I believe that that was actually going to happen? No, I didn't. But it would have been nice because here we are still in July having the war actually escalate rather than being resolved. And you have to wonder, why are we not ending the war, right? Well, I think it's because we're literally using it as a battlefield test zone. Now, what do I mean by that? So here's an interesting article that I really want to share with you guys, because as a fan of the Terminator franchise, well, at least 1 and 2, I mean, Salvation was kind of cool, actually. I think it got a lot of flack for no reason. I was cool with Salvation, but Terminator 1 and 2 and possibly Salvation, Ukraine is starting that for us, okay? And they're going to learn all about it. And then we're going to have to take notes because you know how we've learned that shotguns are decent anti-drone weapons at this point, and that every, small squad or unit seems to have a shotgunner now just in case a drone pops out of nowhere? Well, what are we going to do about the robots, and what guns are going to be good for that? I mean, let me know in the chat. Are we going to have to bump up to that 6.8 by 51? Is that the true reason behind the SIG Spear? It's not necessarily because they wanted that kind of a round, but because they needed something that could penetrate circuitry, right? And get in through robot metal? I don't know, but here's what's happening that I think is very interesting. The American-made M2 Ma-Deuce machine gun is becoming Ukraine's weapon of choice for arming AI-enabled fighting robots. This is a story from July 1st. This is real, okay? This is one of their Sky Sentinel units. This is an AI-integrated turret at the end of the day, okay? And these just got deployed. Like, this is like brand new stuff happening on the battlefield, okay? John Browning conceived of the 50 caliber M2 Browning machine gun in 1918. Toward the end of World War I, though it didn't enter service with the U.S. military until closer to World War II. Known as Ma-Deuce, this powerful gun is among the most famous and enduring weapons. It's received a number of upgrades and is still used by U.S. forces and other militaries. In fact, it's one of the most widely used heavy machine guns in the world today. Now, this is something I want to just touch on really quickly, especially for my gun nuts in the chat, because, I like you guys. I'm guilty of this, and this is why I'm bringing it up, okay? Sometimes maybe old is fine, right? Sometimes maybe things are still good even though they're old. The fact that the Ma-Deuce is still like one of the top dog machine guns on the planet should tell you something, right? And it was invented in 1918. And of course, especially in small arms, we've had a lot of evolutions, but people tend to forget that, AR-15s were originally, designed in the 1960s, right? And not AR-15s per se, but you understand what I'm saying. The original design parameters were conceived at that point in time. That's 60 years ago. And yet we talk about them as if they're modern weaponry, but then people will say, ACOGs are outdated and, this new thing's way better. But is it outdated or is it just proven and good and still good to this day, right? These are the things that I think about every so often. There's a reason why I have an HK USP coming back to me here very soon, even though I had many other options of handgun to choose from, right? So, there's a lot of things that I think about regarding this when I read this story because, sometimes proven and well-designed is better than brand new, even though I'm the victim of brand new at times because I have squirrel brain, and I'm like, wow, look at that. I think it's cool, and I want it. And then I realize, yeah, it's great, but, did I need it? Is it really that good? I don't know. So, we'll see. But anyway, just wanted to bring that up because I think sometimes we like to poo-poo on the past when in reality it's still the future. Now, here's why I'm bringing this up. Ukrainian forces are using robots equipped with machine guns, grenade launchers, and explosives to fire on the Russians and blow up beside Russian targets. At first I thought it said bedside targets, and I thought that would be weird. Many of the Ukrainian defense firms working in the space have chosen the M2 Ma-Deuce machine gun as an armament for these robots. Ukraine's FRDM group, for instance, is a drone and ground robot manufacturer that makes its D-21-12 remotely controlled ground battle vehicle with the 50 caliber gun attached. The robot, designed for firefights and surveillance, weighs 1,289 pounds with its ammunition included and can travel more than 6 miles in an hour. It was approved for use by the military in April. Ihor Kulekevich, Geez, man, that was a bad one. All right, Kulekovich, sorry, Ihor, I did not mean to butcher your name like that. A product manager at Freedom Group, or FRDM Group, told Business Insider last month that the M2 was chosen because the heavy machine gun is readily available in many arsenals in the West. This weapon and the ammunition are easily obtained. The Ma-Deuce is on AI-enhanced robot tanks already. Okay, so we have extreme future robotics, and after any option they could conceive of and all the money in the world because we gave it to them, and anything else that they could possibly want in the sense of weapons development, they said, let's put the machine gun from 1918 on this highly advanced AI-enabled robot. So back to the conversation real quick. Sometimes old stuff just works and maybe it's the right choice, right? And I hate saying that because I like new stuff, but it just sometimes, man, you know? But here's the thing, okay? We have an example here of like AI-enabled robots with 50 cal turrets being used on the battlefield right now. And this is one of my speculations about what's happening there. The reason this war isn't over is because if it was, where would we test out all this equipment? And I think we've talked about that for years now at this point. It's been pretty obvious with the drone warfare and everything else. But now we've moved past that to even actual AI-related weaponry, okay? So, the M2 is also being used in an AI-powered turret called the Sky Sentinel that Ukraine has said has been able to shoot down some of Russia's large and devastating Shahed drones and can stop cruise missiles. The Sky Sentinel system, which, by the way, great, you're going to name it as close to Skynet as humanly possible, is designed to require almost no human involvement, which is important for Ukraine as it faces a big manpower shortage compared to the much larger Russia. The system uses AI to find and track targets and determine firing solutions, which is valuable for the Ukrainians as they face relentless Russian air attacks while grappling with shortages of air defenses. Okay? The M2 has seen combat in a range of conflicts from World War II to Vietnam to Iraq to Afghanistan. And now it's being mounted on AI-enabled turrets. This is crazy, right? So this is something that I just want you to consider and I want you to be aware of. This war might not go anywhere for a very long time or maybe forever. Because right now, it's the absolute best place on the planet to test out all the new technologies related to weapons development. And the amount of money that goes through those weapons developers is insane, to the point of it being like otherworldly, right? So why would they stop it now? Why? When this is the best chance they have at improving and enhancing their weaponry. Now, I just want to talk about this really quick because this story is from June 29th, but like this Sky Sentinel thing is like brand new. Like, so this stuff is real. Like AI, robot weapons with 50 cals is real now. Like this is RoboCop mixed with Terminator, mixed with whatever else you want to point to, right? I don't think we're quite, at Gundam suits yet or anything like that, but maybe eventually, okay? Ukraine deploys world's first fully AI automated turret called Sky Sentinel, okay? Talks about the Aliens movie and all this cool stuff, right? This is the idea behind Sky Sentinel, Ukraine's new DIY air defense marvel designed to stand guard without sleep or MREs and shoot down Shaheds and cruise missiles with zero human intervention, okay? We are currently living through a technological leap period where two forces are colliding in a way that is fundamentally changing the 20th century battlefield that most of us are familiar with. Artificial intelligence and small, cheap swarm tactics. Let's talk numbers. Russia is sending 100 plus Shaheds over Ukraine more or less daily. These are cheap drones at about 30K to 50K a pop, flying slowly and blowing stuff up, okay? Like this is the new battlefield. And I mean, you should at least mentally prepare for it, right? If the U.S. was ever to face an actual conflict on U.S. soil that wasn't unconventional warfare or fifth generation warfare, right? If it was straight up, kinetic conventional warfare, these are the types of threats that you should anticipate. There will be AI enhanced auto turrets. There will be AI enhanced drones. There will be all types of unmanned machinery on the battlefield that you may or may not have to respond to. I'm not saying that that's likely to occur, but I'm saying that if it did, this is the threat that you should be analyzing currently. So, like I said, we know about drones. We know about shotguns, right? Cool. What about these AI-enabled robots that literally travel around on the ground with a 50 cal mounted to them? Okay, so, and I'm talking, stuff that civilians have access to. So maybe a 50 cal, right, might be a good way to go to have distance while also having power. Maybe there's other exotic rounds we could talk about that might be able to penetrate and hit important, internals when it comes to like batteries or circuitry. Who knows what, right? But these are things that we should be thinking about, at least in my opinion. Like, I'm not saying that we're going to have to use them or need them per se, but at least just knowing in the back of your mind what might be effective would be a good idea, right? So you guys let me know in the comments if you have any ideas, right? I mean, I know that we're not technically able to get a lot of the rounds that could be more effective, like some of the more incendiary stuff or the deep penetrators or who knows what else. And of course, you can find anything on certain websites, but it becomes very expensive very quickly. But regardless, like these are things I wanted to bring to your attention because I don't think much was paid to the idea of the Sky Sentinel being deployed here just like last week. But that's like a significant step towards the future of warfare. Like we're in a different era. Things are not going to go the way we assume they would, right? So, yes, that's that's where we're at. So, I see people counting. How old is everyone here, said Nick. Perfect. All right, I'll tell you guys how old I am. I am 37 years old. So, the hair is just advanced, right? This is... what do we want to call that? I already started my Centrum Silver, right? So here we go. But you know what? I'll take it. I'll take white hair over bald. And I'm sorry for any of my bald friends in the chat. Nothing against you. If I was given the option, like I'll take the white hair. So that's where we're at. Let's see here. J-Paz says cat piss and a super soaker is the best bet for us here in the future. And you know what? Maybe there's some truth to that. So make sure you start your cat colonies. It'll be kind of like victory gardens, but just cats. So it'll smell, it'll be loud, you'll be constantly annoyed, but you'll have access to all the ammo you could ever need. So there's that. Let's see here. 300 Win Mag. Yeah, J-Pause, that's something I've thought about in the past. You know what I mean? Kevin Brown says, old is good. 9x19 was invented 124 years ago. Yeah, that is part of the equation, right? Like, yeah. Benjamin says, who would own a Glock when you could own an M&P 2.0? Me. And not because I have anything against the M&P 2.0. I just find that Glocks work well for me. I find that they are extremely easy when it comes to logistics. I can get any holster and light combination you can think of. I can get parts cheaply and easily available. I can also work on the gun very easily. And it's just it's a no-brainer gun. And when I say that, I don't mean everyone should have one. I think it's a good idea in all honesty, but I'm not telling you have to. But what I'm saying is that you don't have to think too hard to be a Glock owner. It's for people, like myself to a degree, where I don't have the time to be out like doing competition and all kinds of other stuff all the time. So I need something that I know will just work and does a good job and has all the stuff I need for it to do what I want it to do. And that's something that Glock does very well. M&P 2.0 is an excellent gun. I have nothing against it. I just personally went with Glock for a couple of the more preparedness related reasons in the sense of access, availability, and logistics. But there's some other great ones out there, okay? So don't get too crazy now. Someone said maybe it's just the camera angle. I'm not sure what we're talking about there, Ditch Doc, but I still like you, okay? Oh, do I have a lazy eye? No, I have two lazy eyes. See, the thing is that I can use my eyes independently, but not at the same time. And so that's one of my superpowers, actually, because right now I can look at you with one eye, and then I can switch to the other eye, and then I can go back to the other eye, and I can switch to the other eye. And it's just something I can do on command, but I can't make them both work together. So if I'm looking at you from one side of my face, it's going to be the eye on that side of my face. And that's just how my body works. And it's unfortunate at times because I confuse people, and I also make them think I'm looking at someone behind them. Oh, well. But luckily, I can still see. And one benefit is that I can look down my rifle scope while also scanning, anything else that's going on in the area. It's perfect. How many rounds of 9mm do you have? Nick, that's not a question I'm going to answer to everybody here right now. I feel like that's a little personal, don't you think? But let's just say I have enough to just shoot a lot and then keep shooting a lot, and then I can shoot more. Because 9mm is actually pretty cheap in comparison to any other round that I stockpile besides 22 long rifle. Which, by the way, newsflash, okay? I use 22 long rifle on a regular basis. It's a great round for utility. It does what it's supposed to do. It is not a great round for every single situation, as some purport it to be. And its capabilities have been overly exaggerated for an extremely long period of time, especially in the preparedness community. So that's one of the reasons why I made that video a while back of like, I hate 22 long rifle. It was somewhat satirical, but it was supposed to be catabolic, so that way people, or catabolic, hyperbolic, so that way people would pay attention and try to understand what it was I was trying to get at. But instead, I get attacked on a regular basis about it because, well, my uncle can shoot a deer in the eye at 900 yards with a 22 and harvest it no problem, so I don't know what your issue is. And those kinds of statements just tell me a lot of things about you. So I don't know what to say, you know what I mean? Look, I use it all the time. I shoot gophers right off my front porch. This is not somebody who doesn't shoot 22 long rifle. I just understand the limitations of it because of how often I shoot it and how often it doesn't perform to the level I wish it would, especially in accuracy when it comes to having any level of wind. And I mean any level of wind. I was out shooting at 100 yards the other day with my 22. It's a bolt action Ruger Precision, so like a relatively accurate rifle. And because I had, 5 to 15 mile per hour crosswinds occurring, at 100 yards, that was pushing my rounds like 4 inches off target, which is a lot compared to any other high-powered rifle round you would be, choosing over it. And for the purposes of pest control, sure, I can deal with that. For the purposes of self-defense, do I want to risk that? No, not really. So that's just where I'm at. Let's see here. How many zip ties do I have? Luke B. I mean, the zip tie department is never ending. Like every time I go to get one, there's just another one there. So I'm not sure how that works out, but I'm okay with it. All right. I have 60 rounds, says Brian. Yes, I have 60 rounds of 9mm. Exactly. How did you know? Lone Wolf, 1,000 yards easy with that 22 long rifle, huh? Yeah, no, for sure. I get it. That's what everybody do. Yeah, Zephael said, 22 mag. I agree. The problem is that 22 mag is expensive, and I shoot gophers a lot, and then, I'll be honest, I miss because they're very small and they're far away a lot of times, and I'm using 22 long rifle. But then I don't want to spend, 50 cents to $1 a round on something just to make sure I hit them the first try, when I can just kind of enjoy myself more shooting 22s, and it's more casual that way. And plus, like my oldest, she can shoot 22, and of course, when I have buddies come over, we're all shooting 22s off the porch. It's not just like blowing the eardrums out of everybody in the house. So it works for what I want it to do, but it's still frustrating at times. You know what I mean? But I don't know if you guys saw that thermal video, but I definitely handled that gopher in that video with a 22, and that was pretty exciting. So anyway, I'm going to let you guys get going. I've got the private live stream here at 9:15. So make sure if you're a channel member, you go to the post tab on my channel page to get to there. And of course, if you're a Subscribe Star member, it's on the main feed of your Subscribe Star. And of course, if you want to be a Subscribe Star member, you can join. It's $5 a month. I think it's a worthy cause if you want to support the channel directly. And of course, I try to do some additional things with the Subscribe Star crew when possible, and I appreciate them always supporting what I do. So I put that link in the live chat right now. And don't forget, in the description of this live stream, you have links to Grindstone Ministries if you want to help with recovery efforts of what happened in Texas, which I think is very honorable and a good idea because they're a very good organization. We also have Task Force 70 if you're interested in getting involved with that program in order to support and nominate local and small town police to go get elite training involving the constitutional aspects of law enforcement as well as the more high-risk aspects of things like hostage rescue or enhanced patrol tactics. And of course, by becoming a monthly donor there, you can get yourself enrolled to receive possible support packages from some great companies like BCM. And then also, if you want to get an MP field tool, go to my website, magicpepper.com. Just go ahead and order one because we will crank those out. I swear we're going to get them out fast. I can't believe the outpouring of support. I really want to just double down to let you know how much I appreciate it. And we just didn't expect there to be such a huge turnout. So we're catching back up immediately. Like things are already happening right now as we speak. But let's just say there's a good amount that we have to get through on this current run. And we're very excited to keep things rolling forward. So Nick says we demand a book. You know what? I've talked to a publisher in the past about possibly writing a book. Maybe it's something I'll look into. But personally, if I'm going to write a book, guys, I'm going to do fiction, and it's going to be fun, but also have lessons related to preparedness, because I find that more interesting. And I don't think we need another How to Survive X, Y, or Z book from a prepper, right? Because I think there's plenty of good ones out there that have been well written already. But I think a fictional book that is unique in nature would be more interesting. So maybe, you never know. We'll see. But you guys are amazing. Thank you so much. And Robert Larson, you're not late. You arrived exactly when you meant to, and I appreciate that about you. And I'll see you guys on the other side. That's going to be it for Magic Prepper.